We all are gonna die. 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 Why don't we help each other prepare for it? Without death there could not be life. I'm talking about end of life conversations, conversations about the end of life. Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
She named the unborn child Daffodil. And so when she sees those daffodils in the spring, her body is responding in the spring. And so we talked about that, like that would be an incredible ritual. Like if you could bring daffodils somewhere to honor a backyard or a sacred space that you have and actually have some daffodils and have that be an offering to her memory.
Welcome to this episode of End of Life Conversations. I'm Reverend Wakil David Matthews.
And I'm the Reverend Mother, Ana Luisa Armendariz. In this podcast, we share people's experiences with death and dying, grief and loss, and the end of life.
We really enjoy all of our excellent and insightful guests. They generously tell their stories with compassion and wisdom. We also want to thank Wakil and Wendy's children and partners for that wonderful introductory song. Okay, let's get started.
Hello, hello. Today we are so happy to have Karen Carlissi back with us here on the podcast. She is a death doula and part of the Beyond the Veil Doula Collaborative and has been trained at INELDA, the International End of Life Doula Association.
We asked her to join us today because we wanted her to tell us about a new series of events that she and Phoenix Destiny, who was also on our podcast previously, these events are specifically for those who have experienced child loss. So welcome. Glad to have you back.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's so great to see you again and to be here with you in this space.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, let's just dive in. So tell us about this work that you're doing around the child loss and what that is, how is that moving in your realm?
So Phoenix and I are collaborating to offer a series of events focused specifically on the layers of grief related to child loss. We've done one already. We're going to be doing another one soon. And what we're doing is we're bringing together anyone who's experienced child loss of any kind, whether it be from a personal experience of losing a child who has already been born, whether it's from physical death or from a miscarriage. We also are including the loss connected to abortion, imprisonment, estrangement, mental illness, and any sort of child loss other than what I just mentioned that could be there. The form that our event takes is usually a workshop, and it includes a series of reflection questions. We give time for the participants to share their experience. We have breakout groups, guided meditation using a little bit of sound healing if time allows. So it's a nice space of about 2 hours to bring people together and allow them to be seen and heard for this grief that is actually not usually allowed in that space to be seen and heard. So we're looking at it as a disenfranchised grief.
Interesting.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I like that. And I agree. It's something that people don't talk about a lot, and people I know who have gone through it in whatever way, as you're talking about, it's very, very difficult. It's maybe one of the more difficult things to go through, and especially if you have no kind of support. And so it's so wonderful that you're doing this work. Can you tell us more about when it's happening next? And it's this we're kind of doing this as a public service announcement, if you will, so that people will know about it and have access to it. And it will be online, correct?
Yes, it is a virtual event. Our next offering is on May 25th from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. And there will be an Eventbrite offering a link that we can provide for that event. We are looking forward to anyone who is experiencing some kind of grief, whether it's now or has been in the past. It doesn't have any time sensitivity to it. Just, anyone can come and bring their hearts and minds to honor this personal experience with us.
That is really interesting. And I'm going to ask about this because as a mother, I have been in circles where others have had a child loss of different kinds, right? Like you mentioned, estrangement or divorce or an abortion or miscarriage. I mean, there's a whole panoply of, loss. So, I'm gonna sit here and ask you, if I were to have a child loss under the umbrella of, let's say, I lost a kiddo in a divorce, how would I be met next to the person who had a miscarriage? Because I think that it's a child that's lost, but they might react differently to being in the same space.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because in our first event, we had quite a range of experiences of child loss, from abortion to stillbirth to 5 failed pregnancies, one that actually was a termination due to a Down syndrome child. And so we actually discussed that a little bit, and how, pain is relative, grief is relative, and we all suffer in one way or another, and we're not judging each other in terms of how bad is your loss compared to mine. If someone is there, they're presenting with some kind of very deep wound, just pain over this particular kind of loss, which is very interesting because the way that we came to it actually was that we were in a death cafe together, Phoenix and I, and there was a woman there who was sharing her experience of having had a miscarriage. And the Death Cafe coordinator said that it's actually rare for anyone to come into the Death Cafe circle and share such an experience. So we became aware that it was something that was really not being addressed. And then we started to talk about the different aspects, the different possibilities. I mean, divorce did not even come up in our discussion, but actually it has a little bit because there's issues around estrangement, which I've experienced myself, that can result from a divorce. The issue of imprisonment, if someone's child has committed a crime, is in prison. I've also had some experience with that, and not my own, but very familiar with it. And so we are welcoming all of that into our space, and whatever the participants bring to us and into the time that we have with them, the others in the group have been extremely supportive. And because they're all sharing a similar pain, which is the loss of a child, as I was saying earlier, it's very different from mostly when we're doulas. We tend to work mostly with people who are approaching the end of a long life, or at least a huge chunk of life, and preparing to end that, to look at the end of that life and to look back, to look at their regrets, to prepare with all of the history that they have and what they're leaving to others. And this is a very different kind of experience, kind of loss, and a particular kind of grief. So we're very interested in bringing that out and into the open, and how that looks and feels to them. For whatever reason it might be, it is that shared experience of what it means to be the parent of a child, which is, I think the difference is that you're looking at a life that's coming, something in the future, and there's a feeling of hope and expectation, and what you sort of have a plan, and all of that is gone. And you have to modify your own view and your own perspective on what it means to have this relationship, because it is now a relationship that is no longer with a person who is present with you for the rest of your life. So here's his first birthday, and here's what would have been when he would have walked, and things like that that are very, very heartbreaking. And so that's the shared part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Could you maybe just walk us through kind of what that would look like? What one of these events would look like? Obviously without sharing people, but just how has it been in the past with people? How have they? What's
the format? How do you format this class in a 2-hour online space?
Yeah. And how does it work?
It's really,
how's it worked?
Sure. Well, we just open by having everyone come in and introducing themselves and saying what it is that they're there for, what particular kind of child loss they've experienced. And then we have a series of questions that we ask and have them do some free writing to just allow that particular kind of experience of writing, which we believe that opens your heart and allows just a free flow of whatever comes out. And we have this like a certain number of questions that we hope will help the participants to access whatever is going on for them about this particular loss. But they are free to write about anything that comes up. They don't have to answer the questions. And we found that that is very helpful as a tool, and it really does open up a lot. And we then bring everyone back into the space to share whatever it is that's in their hearts that they want to share. There is a lot of emotion, a lot of tenderness, and a lot of mutual communication and support amongst the group members during that time. Most of the time is spent sharing and showing compassion and support for each other and giving each other experiences of our own to show that there is understanding and insight and compassion for the other. So that is really a huge chunk of the time. And then we have some time at the end for guided meditation, which is specifically targeted towards bringing into the heart the actual face or image or whatever it is, memory or expectation or feeling that the person has experienced in terms of this connection to the other that they was part of their body, part of their life, and has been lost. And then there's some music and guided meditation, and then we close. And it doesn't sound like a huge amount of activity, but because there's so much going on with the participants in terms of sharing, it's really a lot of the time is spent doing that. There's a little bit of a presentation actually at the beginning, which I didn't mention, about the idea of disenfranchised grief and some scholarly work that's been done on that. Phoenix actually presents on that because it's part of her doctoral work. And that also helps, I think, those who have suffered from this loss to see that there are people interested in it and doing some really kind of mindful scholarly work to find out more and investigate how there can be more support given and bring it out into the open. So as a disenfranchised grief, there is more attention being paid to it. And that particular piece of it is very helpful.
Yeah, awesome.
We also provide a playlist that we created of just a ton of songs that are like just beautiful, connected to that whole issue of child loss. Wow. And I think we're going to add in our next event, we're going to add a book list as well, so that there are this wealth of resources for other people that come to us.
That was basically the question I had, was whether there was a resource, whether they leave with a resource list or with some, next steps, or if there is maybe even a follow-up connection. Do they stay in connection with you or with other people? That kind of.
Yeah, they have actually. They have stated we sent a follow-up email with a list of the playlist and also some organizations that are very helpful in terms of child loss as well, and a book list.
Great.
Yeah.
And we've had ongoing communication. Like one of the participants actually shared that as a result of having had abortion back in the 80s, when it was actually a different time, and that's actually my demographic as well. When women had abortions back then, it was kind of considered a liberating opportunity that had not been possible or available before that. And, our mothers had, my mother had 3 babies when she was at the age of 19. Right. And there was, birth control, abortion, all of those issues had not really come to the surface in terms of opportunities. And so the reflection was that, it was done, but it was never really thought carefully about and felt. And so it was really kind of remarkable that we got this feedback that I'm now thinking she came actually for a different loss of a child after 8 months of life. And so she then came into this other space of really reflecting because others were talking about it. So not to stimulate grief that shouldn't be there, but it's more that I hadn't thought about this and I put it away in a drawer, and I think it does need to be attended to. So that was kind of some of the follow-up that happened.
That's really good.
It feels like that's a really big component in being of service to this community, because I think that it's not just a one and done. It should be tended for a while to make sure they get, especially if it's online, right? You don't get the actual like a hug or
Right.
bear witness to the tears that go on afterwards. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that there is a resource for them to tap into after the fact.
Yeah. And we will also be reaching out to those people, those participants about our next event, because it doesn't necessarily have to exclude them just because they've been once. It can be an ongoing presence. And we will just tailor our, what we offer based on whoever is there. And we also light a candle at the end for all the children who are in our hearts at that time.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So I love that there's some ritual around that. Is there any, do you suggest or teach anything about ritual as far as like this person may, after the class, they might think, yeah, there's some more I need to work on. I need to deal with that. And maybe there's some ritual that they could use to work with it. Is that anything you put into the class or something that, or
It's
you
not
maybe
in the
resources?
class. Yeah, it's not in the class, but it does come up.
Yeah.
It actually, one of our participants lost her baby in spring, and every year since then, it's been a couple of years, when the daffodils are bloom, she named the unborn child Daffodil. And so when she sees those daffodils in the spring, her body is responding in the spring. And so we talked about that, like that would be an incredible ritual. Like if you could bring daffodils somewhere to honor in your backyard or a sacred space that you have, and actually have some daffodils and have that be an offering to her memory.
Ah, beautiful. Yeah, very nice. Thank you for doing that. That's great. And we will, like I said, put a link in the podcast notes so people will be able to get a hold of you. Is there a fee that you charge for that, or?
Oh, we just have a love donation. We have a love donation of $10.
Okay. I like that. That's good. Love donation is very important.
Just for our expenses, copying flyers and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of answered this other question we had talked about, which is how you moved into that space as it relates to end of life work. Is there anything else you'd want to talk about in that regard?
Well, it was interesting. Like I said, the seed of it was this experience that we had in the Death Cafe. I had a personal doula experience. Was one of my earliest clients, and I had been trained, as I had said earlier, like mostly you hear the training about the end of life for people who have lived a long life and some kind of terminal diagnosis and so on and so forth. So I had a client who had a stillbirth. And so I moved into that space immediately and was not like prepared for it, but I prepared myself and stepped into it and was just available for whatever they needed. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful, I created a service and memorial for them and ceremony and just spent some beautiful time with them. And so I think when I was talking to Phoenix, we talked about the Death Cafe experience and then my experience as doula. And then she had some experiences that she was very in tune with. And she's also working on a doctorate and she's very involved in grief counseling. So all of that came together and we love working together. So that was kind of how it grew into this offering.
Great. Yeah. Well, we'll encourage everybody to go back and look at both yours and Phoenix's and the Death Doula podcast, because they all really do a good job explaining what that is and how that works and what you've been doing. And in the meantime, I think is there anything else that you'd like to share before we do our end of the podcast poem?
I think we covered pretty much everything that we had planned on covering for this. I'm just so grateful to Phoenix for, it was really her idea. We had these different experiences, but she really said, we should do this because there is this need. And just the whole idea of disenfranchised grief, and the people that we've worked with so far are just so hungry for this and are just saying, there's just not enough of this happening and we need it so much. And so we're just very grateful that we have each other and that we found this kind of work to be of service to others in this way.
So wonderful. Yeah, we had invited Phoenix, but because of a little mess up on our part, not getting the timing right, she wasn't able to be here. But you can see her podcast and see the lovely work she is, and the lovely person she is, and the lovely work she's doing. So yeah, lots of kudos and praise to Phoenix and yourself for doing this work. Thank you. So why don't would you like to read that poem?
Yeah, I could read it.
Okay, go ahead.
It's called I Remember You. The world may never notice if a rosebud doesn't bloom, or even pause to wonder if the petals fall too soon. But every life that ever forms or ever comes to be touches the world in some small way for all eternity. The little ones we longed for were swiftly here and gone, but the love that was then planted is a light that still shines on. And though our arms are empty, our hearts know what to do. Every beating of my heart says, I remember you.
Thank you. Yeah, very, very moving. Beautiful. And such a perfect example of what we're talking about here.
Thanks so much for joining us on the End of Life Conversations. We appreciate you and look forward to sharing our stories. We encourage you to subscribe to have access to premium episodes and extra resources. Links to our guests and their recommendations and a transcript of this episode will be in the podcast notes.
Yes, thank you so much. And please tell all your friends. Follow us on social media, and again, consider subscribing for some excellent premium content. We want to acknowledge that the music we are using was composed and produced by Charles Heastand. We also want to acknowledge that we live on unceded lands that have been cared for thousands of years by Indigenous peoples who are still here.